Casey seemingly didn't want this child from the beginning. One of her friends told investigators that even recently she talked a lot about the fact that life was sort of a drag having this kid.
There's a friend by the name of Ryan. One day he got a call, or at least talked to Cindy Anthony, Casey's mother, who said stay away from her. She's a psychopath.
She's unconcerned, not because she's a wacko, but because she knows exactly where her child is.
Court documents also quote one of Anthony's friends as saying, "I think something accidentally happened." Casey freaked out. I don't know how she solved that problem, but then created this story in her head.
They're actually grilling her really hard, saying, look, it's one of two things. You either killed this little girl or something bad happened to her, and you're hiding it.
Straight out to Kathy Belch for WFTV. Kathy, what can you tell me about diary entries and a diary that apparently spans years? Reports surfacing that Tot Mom described why Kaylee was killed, and also detailed notes on chloroform and pesticides?
That's right. There is a report out about those things, that supposed missing pages in Casey's diary have surfaced, and that these things that you just mentioned are in those pages. What I can tell you is that when that part of the diary was released, if there was more to be released, it probably would have been released at that time. Prosecutors wouldn't play games with evidence and pick and choose part of the book to be released now and part of the book to be released later. From what we understood back then, those pages were missing when investigators found that book, and that's what they have.
So you're saying that there were actually pages removed from her diary?
There were pages. You could see that pages were removed from the diary when the pictures of that diary were first released. You can see that pages were missing in between, and everybody was debating about whether this diary was coming from 2003 or recently, because the page to the left, which seems like the earlier pages, said 2003, but there was a whole chunk of pages missing in between.
To Natisha Lance, our producer standing by there in Florida. Natisha, what can you tell me? What is allegedly in the diary? What are these notes about chloroform and pesticides, and reportedly a motive for murder? What does Tot Mom say about why little Kaylee was murdered, if these allegations are true?
Well, reportedly, Nancy, they are saying that this was a mercy killing so that Casey could save Kaylee from her mother, Cindy Anthony. Now, none of these reports have been substantiated, but this is what this report is saying that she had planned to kill Kaylee, and it was to save her from Cindy Anthony.
To Dr. Joseph Del Tito, professor of psychiatry, we are taking your calls live. Dr. Del Tito, is that a way to justify a murder, call it a mercy killing, that the child would be better off dead and in heaven than to live with the grandmother?
It wouldn't be the first time it happened. I mean, that type of story is one I've heard before, that people convince themselves that it's better for the kid if this happened to them. Of course, underlyingly, psychologically, in such a case, one has to have great animosity towards the grandmother and be willing to kill the child as punishment to the grandmother, not only as salvation for the child, even in a perverted mind. So I think at a certain perverted logic, it does hold together, and it's a story that I've heard before and others like me have heard before, variations of it.
To Drew Petroman, what more can you tell me about the diary? When was it uncovered? Where was it uncovered? And what about these reports?
It was actually found in the Anthony home. It was released as part of a discovery. It was recovered from the home when they went back to the home to serve search warrants after the remains had been found. And there were some interesting things that were found in there that we did see. It said that she was looking to move on and she was concerned about what had happened, hoping for a brighter future. But from what we see from the page date, it says 2003. Now, there are some pages removed. So as Kathy was saying earlier, it sparked a whole controversy over when that was written, and it also looks like there are those pages that were cut out. So where those pages are now is very interesting, especially since this new report comes out saying that they go all the way to the day that the day before and the day after Kaylee was actually killed.
To Dr. Marnie McCary, physician and professor of public health at Johns Hopkins, question. We've had a lot of discussion in the past few days about a paternity test for Kaylee that was taken on Tot Mom's own brother, Lee Anthony. How is it done?
So basically, there's DNA from both the from Kaylee and the potential person, and a match is performed, and you can either tell that the person is a perfect match for being the father or some distant relative, and there's really nothing in between.
Unleashed lawyers Renee Rockwell, Alan Ripka, back to the diary. If we see that swaths of the diary have been cut out, Renee, around the time the child goes missing and is murdered, not a good look for the defendant.
No, it's not, because as long as they can prove that it is her diary, and you have to think, first of all, Nancy, why would anybody write this down? Secondly, knowing that the investigation looms, why would she keep it? But the fact that part of it is torn out and the rest of it remains does not look good. Okay,
a couple of very plain and rudimentary observations, Alan Ripka. Why does somebody keep it? Well, if you take a look at many serial killers of the past, you see that they keep mementos of their killings. This is not unusual at all. In fact, it is predictable. So the fact that she would keep the diary or document the killing in some way is not surprising at all. It is predictable, just like you and I might take a photo of our senior prom and keep it. Same thing here. So Alan Ripka, why people write it down and keep these mementos, I'm not surprised at all if it's true. But tell me, in a nutshell, how you get this into evidence and prove that it's her diary.
Well, once you prove that it's her handwriting, Nancy, through an expert, you can get it introduced as an admission by her own handwriting and her own conduct, and the judge will allow it in as long as it's probative of what went on. He may not let things in regarding other boyfriends and other things that don't pertain to this case, but anything that may pertain to this murder or Kaylee, he's going to let in as probative information.
Out to the lines, Kathy in Florida. Hi, Kathy.
Yeah, hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good, dear. What's your question?
The twins look like leprechauns last night.
Thank you.
My question is, when Casey was younger, did anybody check to see if she had any psychological problems?
Okay, to Natisha Lance, any history of mental illness at all that we know of?
None that has been substantiated, but we do have reports from some of her friends who said that Casey had asked to be committed before. Also, George Anthony mentioned in an interview that he did have a sister who had had some mental issues, so possibly it had skipped a generation and it had possibly affected Casey in some way.
Thank you for the armchair psychiatric evaluation. Mike Brooks, what are your thoughts on the diary?
Well, Nancy, again, is it her writing? That's going to be easy to do with a handwriting expert. Get exemplars from her via subpoena, and they should be able to tell. That's important. Is it hers or not?